faith, firearms, freedom. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode 22. Today's episode brought to you by Cook's Holsters, American-made custom Kydex holsters with a lifetime warranty and a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Check out cooksholsters.com. First off, let me start out the show with, on a sad note. I want to extend my prayers and condolences for the victims of what is apparently now the worst act of Islamic terrorism on U.S. soil since 9/11. A Muslim man, I'm not sure yet whether he's an American citizen, but he apparently has ties to Afghanistan, opened fire in a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida. This would have been Saturday night or early Sunday morning, killing 50 and wounding 53 more. I'm saddened by this attack, but I got to tell you, I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked because this is what we're facing. I recognize what it is we're up against, what it is they believe. Others on the left, in the media, in our government, don't want to accept it. How long have we heard these hypocritical leftists, talking heads in the media, even members of our government, decrying as racist and hateful those of us who cling to our Christian faith, while remaining silent and doing business in countries where homosexuals face the death penalty for being gay? I'm looking at you, members of Maroon 5 and PayPal and Bruce Springsteen. I don't expect anything to change on that front. I really don't. I'm afraid we're just going to continue to ignore the hateful, intolerant ideology of radical Islam while continuing to denigrate Christians and demanding increased gun control instead. My prayers go out to the victims, our first responders, law enforcement, and our country. We'll be right back.
Planning to head outdoors today? The National Shooting Sports Foundation reminds you to check the fire danger levels in your area. Whether target shooting, camping, or even parking a car with a hot exhaust, remember to take precautions. If you're going shooting in dry conditions, minimize the possible risk of fire by not using steel-jacketed or steel core ammunition, tracer rounds, or exploding targets. As we know, wildfires have many possible causes. Don't be one of them.
Welcome back to Armed Lutheran Radio. How was your weekend? I just got back from the Stars and Stripes IDPA Championship in Tulsa. This is really what I'd planned to talk about today. It was an interesting day. Got up at 2:30 in the morning, Saturday morning, hit the road by 3 o'clock, sucked down a couple of energy drinks on the way, and listened to a Brad Thor audiobook on the way that kept me awake. By the way, for listeners of Armed Lutheran Radio, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. Like I said, I use it myself. I listen to Brad Thor's State of the Union on the way to the match and on the way back. It's great. So go to audibletrial.com/armedlutheran to get your free audiobook and a free 30-day trial. So I got to the match. I was the second one there. I even beat both of the match directors to the range. Sergeant Bill took his Harley and drove up the night before. It was a fun match, really hot. Met some really nice people. Got to see a lot of good friends like Bill and Scott Longhorn, who made the trip down from Iowa. Lots of Collin County IDPA folks. Bill had a rocky first stage. He was, 21 down on the first stage, had 4 failures to neutralize. He really picked it up the rest of the match. He ended up finishing fourth in SSP Expert in a division where the top 4 finished within, I think, 3.5 seconds of each other. And he was also 16th overall. Really impressive. I did my usual fade at the end thing. I started out pretty well, then had lunch, and as the heat wore on and my ankles and knees started to stiffen up, things kind of slowed down for me. I had my worst 3 stages at the very end on stages 8, 9, and 10. And I finished, I think, 22, 26, and 19 points down respectively. And I figured, well, I'm done for. Turns out I finished 4th in ESP Marksman and got my first plaque, which was nice. I was in a really good squad, really nice people. And this is one of the reasons, if you've ever considered going out and shooting IDPA or any competitive shooting sport, do it, because the people are just awesome. We had 5 trophy winners in our group, plus the high law enforcement winner. Everybody was really personable and good-natured. Nobody was really too serious. It was really, really a lot of fun to shoot with these guys. So really fun day. Quick shout out to some friends, Walt and Austin Prue, Mandy Bachman, Alan Motter, Bora Angel, TJ Kane. They all had trophy winning performances in Saturday's match as well, so congratulations to all of them. I went through a ton of water, thanks to the match directors and staff for encouraging us to keep hydrated and making sure that water was available all the time. Went through 2 more energy drinks during the match and then sucked down 2 more on the way home. Got in about 11 o'clock, took a shower, hit the sack. It was a long day, but it was fun. All right. Enough about me and what I did last week. Check out the website, some really cool new features. Go to the feedback page. You can send us an email. Tell us about what you've been doing. Comment on anything you hear or see on the website. Anything you would like us to talk about, any questions you've got, or record us a message. Just push a button. You don't need to make a phone call. You don't need to use your cell phone. All you need is a microphone on your laptop or your tablet or your PC. Send us a question or a comment and we'll respond to it on the show. All right, enough about me. Like I said, what's coming up today? We're going to be talking about 12 tips for building better IDPA stages. So if you're interested in being an MD, if you've ever thought about building stages, or if you're currently building stages and you're not happy with how your stages are going, or if you don't like how your club is building matches, then here are some tips that I'm going to share, the good, the bad, and the ugly that I've seen over the years. Sergeant Bill talks about reloading hot loads and soft loads for competition. Aaron Israel has a series of tips, some information of what you should do in the event that you do actually have to use your gun for self-defense. And we're joined by Eric Woodward, the owner of 199 Trust, to talk about firearms trusts and the upcoming 41F regulation. All of that is straight ahead, right here on Armed Lutheran Radio.
It's the Bill of Rights, not the Bill of Needs. I'm Alan Gottlieb, founder of the Second Amendment Foundation. When someone says we don't need that kind of gun, remind them the Founding Fathers determined what rights our Constitution should protect. There's a world of difference between rights and needs. It is not the function of government to tell us what we need or what we don't. Certainly no one needs an assault rifle or a Saturday night special, or for that matter, no one needs a Corvette with a high-capacity horsepower engine capable of speeds to 150 miles per hour. But in the hands of honest, responsible individuals, we have the right of choice. We have the right to read books others don't like. We have the right to listen to any radio program we choose. We have the right to dress the way we want to. We also have the right to own firearms of our choice. So the next time someone tells you, you don't need something, tell them it's the Bill of Rights, not the Bill of Needs. Join the Second Amendment Foundation today so that this message and our Bill of Rights might live. Call 425-454-7012. That's 425-454-7012.
Pistols, prayer, and potluck. You're listening to Armed Lutheran Radio.
Welcome back to Armed Lutheran Radio. I was thinking about this topic before this weekend's IDPA match in Tulsa, But I got a few more examples and ideas after I got back and thought I'd flesh this out for this week's show. Here are my 12 ideas for how you can improve your stage design for your local or sanctioned matches in IDPA. This is the good, the bad, and the ugly that I've seen over several years of IDPA local and sanctioned matches. And these are in no particular order. Okay, so here we go. Number 1, put yourself in the stage. After you design a stage, visualize yourself in it, in real life. If your stage calls for you to do something that you as a concealed carrier or a gun owner would never do, don't put it in the stage. How many stages have you seen where you're required to start the stage with you're downloaded to 3 rounds because you forgot to reload your magazine, or the gun's in a box or a briefcase, but the magazines are stowed somewhere else? Who does that? Nobody does that. Don't do it. Don't put it in the stage. Number 2, encourage sound tactics. This is something that I've talked about, I've preached about for a while. There was a stage I shot back in 2014 where you're supposed to be at a bank, right? And the place gets robbed and they put all the people in the bank down on the floor. So you're down, face down on the ground, and you hear one of the robbers talk about eliminating the witnesses. So then you're supposed to retrieve your gun and engage the targets from your knees in the open. But the bad guys are hiding behind cover and non-threats. In reality, you'd be dead in about 2 seconds. Now, your cover options might not be great, but you simply wouldn't stand in the middle of an open room, down on one knee, limited to an 8x10 piece of carpet. Oh yeah, you couldn't move off the carpet either, or you got a penalty. Now, there was another stage that I remember a couple of years ago where you're at a campground, you're taking a shower, when the bad guys show up and raid your campsite, but for some reason you decided it was a good idea to leave your gun loaded and unsecured on a stump outside the shower. Nobody does that. It's not sound tactics. So we shouldn't be encouraging it with dumb stage designs. Once you retrieve your gun, you had to move to a tent where all your other ammunition was. But you had to use the tent as cover and shoot from inside the tent using out through the windows of the tent, using the nylon tent walls as cover. I'm sorry, but that's not cover. It's concealment. And once you start shooting from inside the tent, the bad guys aren't going to treat your little nylon cocoon there as hard cover. They're going to shred you. There was a restaurant robbery stage where you had to start from behind cover and then advance towards another point of cover while engaging targets. And the targets were visible at the beginning of the stage where you were standing behind cover. Wouldn't it be smarter to engage from low cover before moving? Come on. Let's be smart here. Encourage sound tactics. That's number 2. Number 3, is concealment really required? Think about that before you design your stage. I cannot count how many stages I've seen in major matches where you're sitting at your house eating dinner or cleaning your gun, but you're still wearing your cover garment. I'm sorry, but does anybody really do that? Requiring it's not only dumb, but when it's 90 degrees outside, it's sadistic. So think about that. Number 4, promote lawful gun ownership. We all know the stereotype that lawful gun owners and concealed carriers get from the media and from the anti-gun crowd. We're dangerous, we're Rambo, we're wannabe police officers, we're anti-government nut jobs, we're terrorists and killers. Don't build stage scenarios that reinforce that misguided view. Don't build a scenario where you're some anti-government nut and the black helicopters come to get you. Don't build some stage where you're a member of a gang and you're and rival gang members show up and you get in a shootout with them. Yes, I have seen that in a stage. The sport is based on legal concealed carry for self-defense. Why would we build stages? Why would we allow stages that suggests that you're carrying a gun as part of a criminal gang. Or here's another one. You're sitting on a park bench, enjoying the day, and you decide, you're just too uncomfortable with your gun in your belt, so you decide to set it and all of your ammunition on a table in full plain view of everyone in the park. There are political fights in cities around the country over whether it's legal to carry concealed firearm in a public park, and yet the premier sport based on defensive pistol craft allowed a stage at a major match that violates every tenet of concealed carry. So don't do that. Promote lawful gun ownership. That's number 4. Number 5, don't overlook the little things. I know you have to employ a certain amount of creative imagination to create buildings and rooms from snow fencing and chicken wire and plywood. You can't construct entire buildings, entire functional structures. So a certain degree of imagination is required. I get it. That being said, little things go a long way to help with the immersion of shooters in the defensive scenario stages that they face. Using realistic props rather than imagination can go a long way. So, I mentioned that bank robbery stage earlier. The start position had you start face down with your gun in a briefcase. The problem was, they didn't even have a briefcase. It was just an X made out of tape that you had to set your gun on. Imagine there's a briefcase, they said. You mean to tell me that you couldn't find a freaking cardboard box with a lid? I mean, how hard is that? There was another stage at a match last year where you were meeting your significant other for a romantic dinner. And you started the stage with a bouquet of flowers in your hand. The only problem was that the bouquet was a block of wood with the word flowers written on it. Same match. Another stage where you started with a rifle in your hands. Only the rifle was a 2x4 with the words AR-15 written on it in Sharpie. Now, to be fair, they did give you some options. They had another 2x4 that had AK-47 written on it, so you could choose. You've got 150, 100, 120 shooters paying $100 a piece, and you can't go to the dollar store and buy a dang bouquet of plastic flowers and wrap them together in duct tape. You couldn't get a couple of plastic toy rifles at the dollar store. I mean, come on. Number 6, make standards suck less. Now, depending on the size of the match, standard stages are required. But standard stages are awful. Nobody likes them, at least not normal people. There are probably some sickos who like standard stages, but I'm not talking about them. Bunch of weirdos. Find a way to make standard stages more fun and make them move faster. Nothing kills a match like a multi-string standard stage where traffic just bottlenecks and squads end up waiting to shoot, especially when it's really hot. Standard stages suck enough. Waiting an hour to shoot them is just awful. Try combining scenarios with your standards. Now, there was a match I shot last year that was actually fun. I mean, the basic gist of it was you worked at a pawn shop. One day, the first string, you had 3 bad guys come in to rob the store while you were working. And you shot the 3 targets at different distances, freestyle. The second string, on a different day, the robbers decide to come back a second time. This time, you're recovering from having been wounded in the encounter with the first group of robbers. So your weak arm is injured and in a sling, so you have to hold it against your body, and you had to shoot strong hand only. Now the third string was a third incident, where another group of robbers come back. This time, your strong hand had been wounded in the second robbery, your weak hand is now better, and this time you have to shoot weak hand only. That was actually fun. And here's another tip for standard stages. Do not put 2 standard stages in the same match. And please, dear Lord, don't put them back to back. Number 7, use real life events or places in your match. One of the things that makes sanctioned matches more fun than local matches, in my experience, is the time that is taken to develop a scenario and to explain it. At most local matches that I've been to, the stage brief basically consists of start here, move here, shoot these targets, proceed to this position, shoot these targets. Okay, let's go. That's basically how local matches are run. And to me, they're not fun. Using a real-life scenario or a place that people can recognize can help immerse the shooters in the scenarios and make it more fun for them. Maybe other shooters like the whole go here and shoot here, shoot that approach, but I don't. IDPA is based on defensive shooting scenarios, and that's what makes it more engaging to me. So when a match like, say, Texas State this year bases its stages on real places and events from Texas history, that makes a difference. Number 8, try a theme. To follow up on the use of real-life places and events, another thing you could do to amp up the fun is to choose a theme for your match. For example, one year the Silver Dollar Championship in Wichita Falls based every stage on scenes from the movie Die Hard. The Mountain Valley Regional in 2015 designed every stage based on a reality show from the History Channel. So you had a stage called Axemen. You had a stage called Yukon Gold, Amish Mafia, American Pickers, Pawn Stars. So choose a theme for your match if you can. That kind of stuff will make it a lot more fun for the shooters. And we had a ton of Monty Python and the Holy Grail jokes at the Stars and Stripes match last weekend, so I'd love to see somebody do a match based on a Monty Python theme. I'm still waiting for that. All right, number 9, don't do gimmicks. If you have to resort to gimmicks to make your stage more challenging, step back, rethink your stage, and redesign it. For example, if you have a stage where it's, your standard table draw stage or a restaurant stage where you draw the gun and you engage an array of targets in front of you, and then just for the heck of it, you throw in 2 steel plates at 20 yards to end the stage, I'm sorry. No, that's one of my pet peeves. This is IDPA. You want to do that stuff, go to USPSA. I'm sorry. Yeah, accuracy is important. All right, fine. Then put a man-sized target out there. Put a standard IDPA target out there. Don't put an 8-inch plate out there. There was another one. I think it was a match I shot last year. You had to shoot a standard IDPA target, but you had to do it through an 8-inch porthole in a steel plate. Stages with levels of priority that are just beyond what's legal, with targets bunched close enough together to create confusion about the order in which the targets have to be engaged. Saw that at a major match last year. Tier 4. Not fun. It also had a start box that you couldn't get out of. Not fun. Don't do it. Stages that require unusual numbers of rounds in your gun at the start, or which arbitrarily require a certain number of shots on a target or illogically limit the movement of the shooters. For example, if you want a shooter to engage a target in the head, you want to require a headshot, well, align the target so that the head is only available. Set it up so that the headshot is the best shot. Make it realistic. But don't simply put an open target out there and then penalize somebody for 2 perfectly good down 0 shots and no shot in the head. Sorry, dumb. I understand the need for Mozambique drills, and I got called out on this in a blog post that I did because, sometimes you encounter a target and you shoot him twice in the chest and he doesn't go down, so you have to then go to the head. That's what the Mozambique drill is all about. I get it. I was wrong. I'm down for that. Why would it not be okay for me to shoot the guy 3 times in the head then? Why do I get penalized for shooting him 3 times in the head? Oh, you didn't follow the stage description. I'm sorry. Isn't the point of this defensive shooting? I know it's a game, but come on. I ran into this at a major match last year. A reverse Mozambique required on open targets, where you had to put 2 in the head and 1 in the body. It's gimmick. It's just dumb. Don't do it. And don't tell me there's some rationale for it, because there's not. It's just an arbitrary way to make a stage more difficult. Number 10, be pro-choice. No, not that kind of pro-choice. What I'm talking about is embracing the idea that shooters should be able to choose different approaches to the same stage. Avoid arbitrarily limiting shooter choices. To me, the fun of action shooting is what I call high-speed problem solving with a gun. Unfortunately, what you see most often in IDPA is that stages are designed to be shot one way only, and they come down to who can shoot them the fastest. And that's okay, but it's also kind of repetitive. Build stages that encourage shooters to shoot the stages different ways. Maybe they could go left or right. Maybe they could go through a door or a window. Maybe they can shoot the same target from different shooting positions, but with trade-offs at each position. There was one match that I've criticized earlier. I haven't named names, but you could take two different approaches to a group of targets. One, you didn't have to move quite as far to get to, but the shots were more difficult. If you went to the left, for example, you got really easy open shots, but you had to backtrack to get to it. Those are great. Encourage shooters to think about what plan of attack is most efficient for them. Those stages are fun. I love to see more of that. Number 11, avoid repetition. I know there's only so many stage templates that you're going to see in most every match. You know, the backup to cover start, the coming home to find bad guys in your house stage, the ATM holdup, moving from room to room and shooting through the doorways, the restaurant stage, the table start. You know, there's only so many of those sorts of things that you can come up with. But try not to stack multiple scenarios with the exact same basic structure in back-to-back stages. Break them up. If you have to have several table starts stages in the same match, break them up so that they're in different parts of the match instead of being back to back to back to back. So avoid repetition just to keep things fresh. And finally, here's number 12. There is such thing as too much of a good thing. The Stars and Stripes Regional that I talked about earlier in the show had five stages where you were either starting with the gun in a box or in a drawer or on top of a table. Out of 10 stages, 50% of the match was holster optional. Those kinds of things are good variation, but 50% of a sanctioned match is a bit much. There are my ideas for making better IDPA match stages. I hope those suggestions are helpful. Put those to use in the next time you're a match director at your local match, or if your club is thinking of hosting a sanctioned match, think about these things and put them to use. Share these ideas with your local club. And if you've got ideas of your own, I'd love to hear them. We could add to them. Send your suggestions to armedlutheranradio@gmail.com or go to the feedback page where I have a contact form and the opportunity for you to simply send me a voice message and give me your ideas and your thoughts on what you've heard here.
Bringing you law, gospel, and guns. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Welcome back to Armed Lutheran Radio. Time now for another Ballistic Minute with Sergeant Bill Silvia.
This is Sergeant Bill with your Ballistic Minute. Today's topic: match practice ammo hand loads, soft or hot loaded ammo. When you're shooting practical pistol sports, you have to make power factor. Power factor in most of the sports is done the same. They take the weight of the bullet in grains, they multiply it times the feet per second, and then it has to make a certain number. Like in IDPA, most stock service pistol and enhanced service pistol guns have to make 125 or 125,000. Now, guys that hand load their ammo or reload, they will sometimes try to tune their ammo down and get it as close to that power factor level as they can, so they can have what a lot of people call bunny fart loads. They're really soft, really low recoiling ammo. I look at it this way. I want to make sure my ammo makes power factor, and I make sure it has a little bit of room to spare. That way, if there's any weather conditions or whatever it may be, if they're using somebody else's gun, or maybe their chrono's not the same brand as mine and they're not exactly the same, I don't have to really worry about it. Some guys say that they load their match ammo really soft, and then their practice ammo hot so that it more mimics shooting full house defensive ammo. And I've heard other guys have told me they do the exact opposite. Their practice ammo is super light so they can build up the confidence that they can shoot really fast and really well, and then they make their match ammo a little bit hotter, and in the heat of the match they don't even notice that it's a little bit hotter. It all sounds like a lot of work to me. I like to just get a load that makes power factor, has a little bit of wiggle room, and is good to go. I want it to be reliable more than anything else. Having ammo that barely makes power factor, that might get you DQ'd at a sanctioned match that you spent time and money and traveled or whatever it may be, is just silly, because then you kind of wasted all that time and money when all you had to do was just add a little more powder and play it a little bit safer. Truth be told, when it comes to handguns, I'm not really recoil sensitive. To me, shooting a 9mm gun, a 40 cal, a 45, there's not a big difference to me. I know a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, Sergeant Bill, you're crazy." Maybe I am, but I don't really see the difference. I just shoot them. I feel a little bit of difference in the recoil impulses, but not like that 45 is really kicking and a 9mm is just really soft. It doesn't really matter to me. So I just make sure mine makes power factor and it's reliable and don't have any problems with it, like squib loads or bad accuracy or something like that. And I just make sure it's good to go, and I go and shoot. I'd rather fine-tune my shooting skills than spend time to fine-tune my ammunition. I make my ammunition so that it works and is reliable and is accurate. That's all I need. This has been your Ballistic Minute with Sergeant Bill.
If you carry a gun for personal protection, it's imperative that you get a good holster. When I started out, I had no idea what that meant, and I went through a bunch of really bad holsters. Then I found Cook's Holsters at cooksholsters.com. Cook's Holsters are custom made to fit your specific firearm. Available in lots of colors, including custom printed Kydex. Cook's Holsters are made in the USA and the great state of Georgia and come with a lifetime warranty against defects and a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Visit www.cooksholsters.com and use the promo code ARMEDPODCAST and get a 15% discount off everything in the store. You put a lot of time and money into the firearm you choose to carry for personal protection. Carry it in the best holster. cooksholsters.com.
I got the invitation to go on this Armed Lutheran Radio show, though. You know this guy? Have you seen this? There's two things that I would like to say that make me feel safe. Number one, the fact that there is a radio show called the Armed Lutheran Podcast somewhere in the world. That makes me feel safer.
And welcome back. It's time now for a self-defense tip from Aaron Israel of Fundamental Defense.
Hey folks, this is Aaron Israel here with your personal defense tip of the week. This week I want to talk to you about what to do in the immediate aftermath of a defensive shooting. Now I want to state up front that I am not a police officer or a lawyer, and I have not personally been involved in the real-life use of deadly force. However, I base my advice and opinions on this matter on the study of what some well-versed cops and lawyers do recommend and the studies of actual case law and trial proceedings. Two good books that you need to own if you're an armed citizen are Deadly Force by Massad Ayoob and The Law of Self-Defense by Andrew Branca. You can also find DVDs and videos on this topic at personaldefensenetwork.com, and most of my advice on this matter is going to come directly from those sources if you want to see my primary sources. So, let's set the scene in your head. So you've just shot somebody. You've used deadly force in self-defense. You have the proverbial smoking gun in your hands and your attacker is laying on the ground, potentially bleeding out in front of you. What do you do next? Well, the first thing that I'm going to recommend is something that we actually cover in the defensive focus shooting curriculum, and that is you need to break your focus on that threat and look around and process information about your environment. As you look around at your environment, you're going to be looking for 4 things. First off, you want to look for other threats that may be in the area that you may need to deal with. Did your attacker have an accomplice? Is someone about to continue the attack? Are you about to get hit by a crowbar? Someone else pointing a gun at you that you perceive as a threat? If so, you may potentially need to drive out and shoot that threat and deal with that situation first off. Secondly, you're going to be looking for people who don't need to be shot, non-threats, people such as another armed citizen walking up that you might need to communicate with that you're the good guy and they don't need to shoot you. Perhaps there's a uniformed security guard or police officer already arriving on the scene that you need to immediately surrender to so that you don't get shot by somebody trying to respond to the gunfire that they just heard or saw. That could all happen, so you're going to be looking for those people that don't need to be shot and dealing with that appropriately. Thirdly, you're going to be looking for people who may need your help. It's possible that innocent bystanders may have been wounded in the shooting, and you may need to get out your medical kit that we talked about last week and render aid to those people. Now, I would not include your attacker in that category. Some people say that you should be prepared to render aid to your attacker. I don't agree with that. Let him deal with his bad decision and let the ambulance save him or not save him whenever they arrive. He's not your responsibility at that point. He put himself in that situation. Let him bleed out if that's what's happening. You don't need to render aid to that person, in my opinion, because they could continue the attack, and your best of intentions may end up getting you killed even after you've dealt with the threat. So don't render aid to that person that you just shot, but there may be people in the immediate vicinity who are wounded that you need to deal with. And also, you may need to patch yourself up. You may need to put a tourniquet on yourself. You may have been shot or stabbed or whatever in that altercation, and you may need to render medical aid to yourself, which is another reason you carry a medical kit. Fourth, you're going to want to look around for a position of advantage or cover that gives you a safer vantage point until the scene is fully secure. So if you can get to cover and better assess the situation from a place that's not out in the open, behind some cover, that's going to be a good thing for you to do. You're going to want to be looking for that covered position where you can be in a position of advantage until that situation is fully secure. Once you process this information and you've looked for these 4 things and dealt with them, you want to holster your weapon as soon as you believe it is safe to do so. If at all possible, you don't want to have that gun in your hands when the police arrive if you can avoid it. Now, you might be in a situation where you need to keep your weapon out. There's other threats in the area that you've seen, but they've run off and you're not sure where they are. Maybe that guy is still potentially in a position where he could continue to fight, and you want to keep your gun out just in case something happens. If you're not going to put your gun in the holster, you should at least bring it in close to your chest in the high compressed ready position and give yourself that lower profile while still being able to drive out and shoot if you needed to. That's going to look a lot less threatening than having your gun at full extension when another armed citizen runs up or the police show up on the scene. So holster up if you can. That's the best option, but if not, at least compress it into that high compressed ready position in that lower profile. Next, breathe. Take some slow, deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. You've just been through a traumatic event with a lot of things going on inside your body as a result of the activation of your sympathetic nervous system. And you're going to need to calm yourself down a little bit before you have to interact with the police or other people. Now, once you've taken those few deep breaths and kind of gotten your heart rate back down a little bit, you're going to want to call 911. There's probably going to be a lot of people calling 911, and you certainly want to be one of those first ones because that makes you the complainant. You're the person filing a complaint against a criminal attacker, right? So there's going to be all kinds of calls coming into 911, and some of them might be giving bad information. So another reason that you want to call 911 immediately is you want to give that good information so the police have the best info when they arrive on the scene. When you call 911, you're going to want to clearly communicate that you were attacked and that you just shot someone and that you need the police and an ambulance. You want to give a description of where you are, what you look like, the fact that you're armed, and then stay on the line to provide further information that may be helpful to responding officers. Once you've given that basic information, though, of where you are, the fact that you're armed, you've just shot someone in self-defense, and you need an ambulance, you need the police, you don't need to feel obligated to answer any detailed questions. The 911 operator might ask you all kinds of detail. You're not in a position to give a lot of detail. You want to keep that line open, but you don't want to give them any more information at that point aside from what they need to get the police there and to be able to find you. The reason you want to keep the line open is that this may be useful to you in court later on down the line to have a live recording of the immediate aftermath of the shooting. That's nothing but good evidence in your favor because you're a good guy, and having that recording there is going to be admissible as evidence, and it's going to show exactly what was going on right after you used deadly force, and that could definitely work to your advantage. That being said, That's why we don't answer the detailed questions. That's why we don't talk about all the details of what just happened to the 911 operator. If they keep asking you, just politely say, hey, I'm not in a position where I want to give any details right now. I just need you to get the police here. This is an active crime scene. You need to get the cops here so that they can deal with it. When the police do arrive, you can expect them to have their guns pointed at you, and they're going to be yelling at you and telling you to drop your weapon and get on the ground and all those sorts of things. It's going to be very tense. They're going to be very amped up. All they know is that somebody just got shot and whatever information 911 dispatch gave them, which may or may not be good or bad information, right? So comply immediately with all of their commands. You'll be handcuffed. You can expect that. You can expect to be manhandled a little bit, thrown on the ground, all that kind of stuff. And it's to be expected because they don't know any more than what dispatch told them, and their first priority is to get the scene secured, and then they'll start sorting things out. So expect to be handcuffed, expect to have guns pointed at you, expect to be yelled at, all that kind of stuff. If it's easier than that, that's going to be the anomaly, but it's probably going to be a pretty tense couple of seconds there when the police show up, and you should expect that. There's one school of thought that says you should refuse to speak at all to the police and say nothing to them if they start asking you any questions, and immediately request your attorney and go tight-lipped. The problem with that approach is that if you don't claim self-defense on the scene, a prosecutor who's after you could later accuse you of fabricating the self-defense claim after the fact based solely on the advice of counsel, and you're basically being accused of making it up, which obviously could potentially look bad to a jury. If you claim self-defense on the scene, it's going to potentially be a lot better for you. So my advice is not necessarily to say nothing. That say nothing advice is given by defense attorneys to people who are guilty, because obviously if you're dealing with a criminal, the more they say, the worse off they're going to be. So you want them saying nothing at all because they can't possibly say anything that's not going to incriminate them. So you want them to keep their mouth shut. But you are not a criminal. You're not guilty of any crime. So that approach isn't as beneficial to you. While it is an approach, it's not one I recommend. I use an approach called say little, which is somewhere between saying nothing at all and saying too much. My advice is to communicate clearly that you were attacked and that you shot in self-defense and that you want to sign a complaint against your attacker, what we would commonly refer to as press charges, but what the police call signing a complaint against your attacker. That clearly points out that you were attacked and you are the good guy and you want to file a criminal complaint against your attacker. Once you've stated that clearly, you want to next point out witnesses and evidence. You want to point out people who saw what happened. You want to point out the shell casings or the knife that the guy dropped. He dropped his gun over there. I saw his friend run around the corner. There's a blood trail over here. All that's important because if you don't point these things out, witnesses have a tendency to walk away without being interviewed by police, and then they never get entered into the record. And evidence can be missed by police, or it can disappear. That shell casing can roll down the drain. That firearm can be picked up by a buddy a few minutes after the fact when nobody's looking and thrown in the bushes, and then it's never found. All of those things could happen, so you want to point out those witnesses and evidence so the police know where stuff is so that they know to get it cataloged. In fact, if you have time in the immediate aftermath, it wouldn't be a bad idea to take pictures of the crime scene on your phone. Most everybody has a camera phone nowadays, and if you're in a position where you've got time, it wouldn't hurt you to take a few pictures of that crime scene before the cops arrive, because that's going to be evidence in your favor, obviously. If the police start asking you detailed questions, you're not in a position to answer detailed questions, just like I said about 911, especially if they take you into custody or read you your Miranda rights. So if they start asking detailed questions, and especially if they read you your rights and take you into custody or take you downtown, you want to assert your rights and express that you will provide full cooperation, but that you want to have your counsel present before you answer any further questions. And at that point, that's going to be your name, rank, and social until your counsel is present, and you don't want to give a complete statement or sign any sworn statements or anything like that, or give any written statements until you've had at least 24 hours to process the events, and then with your attorney present, you can go back and give a full and complete statement and fully comply. And you're going to express your willingness to do that, but you're going to want to assert your rights at that point and not answer any detailed questions once you're taken into custody, or if the questions start getting too detailed, because you're just not going to have the recollection to be able to do that, and it could do you more harm than good, because that's where inconsistencies and all that sort of thing comes from. At that time, it would be good to have a Texas Law Shield or Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network card handy. So if you're not a member of one of those legal defense organizations, then there's several of them out there, and you can do the research on your own and find a good one, because you don't want to have to deal with that public defender unless you have to. This would be a good time to have that hotline in your pocket so you can get your lawyer en route and get ready to mount your defense. So to summarize, you just shot someone. The first thing you're going to do, break your focus on the threat, process information. Look for other threats, Look for non-threats, look for people who need your help, and look for a position of advantage. Next, holster if possible, or at least compress the gun in the high compress ready position. Then calm yourself down with some rescue breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth. Call 911. Give them the basic info they need and leave the line open so that you've got that recording live of the events right in the aftermath. When the police arrive, you don't want to say nothing, you don't want to say too much, you want to say little. Communicate that you shot in self-defense, that you wish to sign a complaint against your attacker, point out witnesses, point out evidence, and if asked detailed questions or taken into custody, express your willingness to cooperate, but that you want your lawyer present and you'll give a full and complete statement in 24 hours. That's your personal defense tip for the week. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome back to Armed Lutheran Radio. If you've been thinking about establishing an NFA-specific trust, but you don't know where to start or what it all means, now is the time to do it, and that's what this segment is all about. Since 2012, 199 Trust has completed over 20,000 NFA-specific trusts with no issues, no denials, and now we got something called 41F coming in July, and I have no clue what that means, but I'm joined by somebody who does. I've got the authority. Eric Woodward, the owner of 199 Trust, is with us. Eric, welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hey, how you doing, sir?
All right, let's get started with the basic questions, get those out of the way right off the bat, right off of your website. What is a gun trust? Why should I have one?
Yeah, sure. So even after 41F, the main advantages to gun trusts still stand. There's three ways to purchase Class 3 items, and Class 3 covers everything from short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, suppressors, full autos, and any other weapons, as well as destructive devices, but that's kind of obscure and rare. Using a gun trust allows somebody to have flexibility now and in the future with who's a responsible party on that, and able to handle, use, transport, store, shoot, add items to the trust. Very broad power, as opposed to one individual. So the three different ways to purchase Class 3 is through a trust as an individual, outside of a trust, and through a corporation. A corporation, I think we can all agree, that's just a ridiculously bad idea. Why would you, tie your livelihood to such a hot potato, right? It just doesn't make much sense. As an individual, it's one way to do it. It's, like I said, though, it's very rigid as far as who can handle, even transport or store those items. A trust is just the way to go. It's all upside. It's one of those rare times in life where it's all upside, no downside.
Right. Well, let's step back a second. Let's simplify things for people who aren't familiar with how all this stuff works. Give us a quick overview. If I say I want to buy a silencer, or I want to build an SBR.
Okay.
What are the differences? What do I have to do now as an individual?
Sure.
And what would, if I have my 199 trust in place, what would be the difference in terms of the process of actually purchasing and taking possession of that silencer?
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. So right now, as it stands, this is before July 13th, 2016, when 41F kicks in.
Okay. If
you have an application pending before then, whether it be a Form 1 if you're building an SBR, if you're building your own suppressor, or a Form 4, which is the tax stamp paperwork you use if you're buying from a dealer or another individual, something that's already manufactured. They're almost identical, but they're two different things. So with a trust, right now, you don't need to submit fingerprints and photographs with either the Form 1 or the Form 4. And that's, anything up until, let's say, July 6th, because you got to get it in there. They got time to, accept it. I'm just throwing out July 6th as an example. I don't know what date it'll actually be, 5th, 7th, whatever. That they actually say, okay, this is pending before July 13th. So if the application is pending before then, you don't need to submit fingerprints and photographs. After July 13th, you'll submit fingerprints, photographs. There's a couple of twists here, couple of loopholes, I guess you'd say. I don't know what other term you'd use that the ATF seems to have kept open. For example, you can you can start the trust with just you as a trustee. And at least with our documents, we make it very easy to add or remove people and change addresses and things like that in the future. So you can add a trustee after you get that application in, and because pretty much not have to submit fingerprints and photographs for them. So you end up basically with the same thing. The only difference being that the original trustee or settler on the trust, the main person on the trust, would have to submit fingerprints and photographs. But so I guess it's a little bit of a workaround, a little dodge. I don't suggest that people use it. I mean, here's what I did. Let's just skin this cat for the fingerprints. I went to my local sheriff's department, talked to the lady at the front desk, and did the fingerprints. They're all digital now most of the time. They're not no more ink.
Right.
So I just had them print out 20 fingerprint cards for me.
Right.
So I can use them. It really isn't that bad of a process. And honestly, here's the silver lining to 41F. Right now, the application processing times are insane. I mean, you're looking at 6 months to a year right now for a Form 4, and that's on a good day.
That's with a trust or without?
It doesn't matter. I mean,
doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Oh.
Like 41F. People have just gone gangbusters in the last. I mean, we've had a 300% increase in trust production in the last 3 months. It's just insane. And that translates into wait times because the ATF didn't plus up their examiners, right? But that is something there's some changes that are coming with 41F that will be structural changes in the ATF that I think will be of a huge benefit to us. One of those being that they're going to hire more examiners, supposedly. They're streamlining a lot on the e-forms process, which is nice. And with these couple extra regulations, just most guys, I don't want to say a lot, but a fair amount of guys won't be submitting any more applications, or at least they'll tamper that down a little bit, so it won't gum up the process so bad. So, I think we can get approval times back down to the 2-3 month range, which is still a long time, but it beats the hell out of a year.
So instead of submitting all your forms in paper, you'll be doing more of it online.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
I think so. I mean, right now, one of the big ones, and I don't know if you're going to let me gratuitously plug my new venture, but
oh, absolutely.
Okay. Well, right now, if anybody's interested, we're doing a $99 22 suppressor. We're fixing to roll it out next week. It's going to be called Rebel Silencers. Look out for it. We've done just a couple of Form 3s for guys, friends of mine or whatever. And a Form 3 is a dealer-to-dealer transfer. Now, typically a Form 3, it took 10 days, 2 weeks, something like that, right? For me to ship a suppressor to another dealer in order for them to do the Form 4 for somebody. We got 3 Form 3s back just now, and they took 2.5 months. That's priority over everything else for the ATF. So that just goes to show you how gummed up the system is right now. Dealers can't even get inventory to people, and not because they're selling out of inventory, because the ATF can't handle this volume. So gotcha. I mean, yeah, if it's me and I'm looking to do it, honestly, I should be hyping it up and telling you guys to go buy trust right now. If you have the means to submit fingerprints, I would absolutely continue to use the trust. I mean, you have to be flexible in this with this equipment and give yourself a degree of separation. That's another big thing. I would wait until after July 13th to submit something, because you're going to get it processed. You'll get that if you submit. I'd be willing to bet right here on your show, if I submitted something on July 15th, I'm going to get it back before somebody that submitted in March. So, yeah, if you have the means to submit those fingerprint cards, I'd hold off and I'd just do it with the fingerprint cards. But, that's just me.
Huh. What would I have to do as an individual that I don't have to do with a trust?
Yeah, so
just not even considering 41F. What's the difference currently?
Currently?
Yeah.
So as an individual currently right now, it's almost exactly the same process. Let's say you're doing a Form 4. Let's just use that as an example.
Okay.
With a Form 4, as an individual, for one, you can't do an electronic Form 1 as an individual. That's a problem. I mean, you can do that right now with a trust. That's a big advantage. But after 41F, the playing field will be level as far as the only thing we're talking about with 41F. This is a really important point. the only thing we're talking about with 41F is processing procedures. That's it. It all it does is level the playing field between individual and trust. I mean, honest to God, if I went out of business, it's not going to happen. But if I went out of business today, I hope, and I'm just saying that because I want to show that I'm unbiased here, I hope that everybody uses the trust when they're purchasing these items, because nobody can divine the future. And this thing gives you a degree of separation. It allows multiple users. It just gives you flexibility with items that are very, very rigid. I mean, I don't think people understand how, rigid an individual is with an NFA item. I mean, if you were to leave at SBR, let's just use this example. You leave an SBR, you went shooting, and it's 10 years from now, you just completely forgot that there's any regulation on this thing. You leave it in your trunk of your car, and your wife goes to the store. She gets pulled over for whatever reason. The cop thinks it's a stolen car or something. I don't know.
Right.
Searches the car. There's an SBR there. Well, as an individual, you're in a whole heap of,
Right.
God, I mean.
That's where the difference is. It's not so much in the processing or the purchasing of the items.
It's in the benefit.
The big advantage is what you can actually do with those items once you have them in your possession.
Exactly. Flexibility is the name of the game. I mean, everything in life you should strive to be flexible, right? I mean, in a career you give yourself more options. I mean, this is number one, and it's the same thing here with these firearms. I mean, honestly, God, I mean, whether you purchase it from us or not, people, get a trust. Use a trust. I mean, it is absolutely the best under the current structure. Or any structure, it will always be the best thing to do to give yourself a degree of separation between yourself and those items. There's just absolutely no reason to tie yourself or your business to a suppressor or whatever.
So to clarify that on what you're talking about, the degree of separation for those who don't understand.
Yeah.
If I purchase a suppressor, whether it's through a trust or not, and I'm the only, let's say I do it through a trust and I'm the only trustee, and I let someone else use it on the range, or like you said, I forget it, leave it in the car.
Right.
Whoever is handling that gun is now in violation of federal law. Is that right?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, and I've asked the ATF this on lots of occasions. I like to ask different people the same questions. And you just make sure that the answers never change.
Right.
And so I asked, hey, like I'm at the range, and I let my buddy who's standing right next to me shoot the gun. Is that constructive possession? They're like, okay, common sense rules, But if you're in a different hunting blind, now we're talking about a different situation. There's just a lot of different, and like if and let's say something happened to you. Just throw this out there. Let's say somebody's let's say they're not even a felon. They get accused of a crime, and that happens, whatever, and they get their rights to keep and bear arms, stripped. Mm-hmm. Happens too often. I think we can agree. So that let's say that happens. Now, what happens to? I mean, we know what happens to normal firearms, right? That come confiscated. What happens to, NFA firearms, right? We're on a whole other scale, another whole other ball of wax of trouble. So with that degree of separation, what I'm talking about is that doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the trust, right? I mean, for all intents and purposes, we can argue it all day long. What that means. If I'm the only one that can handle it and shoot it and store it, well, I kind of own it, But really, the trust owns that. The trust is set up to benefit two parties: the settler, which is you, and beneficiaries. So, what's supposed to happen is that gets passed down to beneficiaries. It's not the gun's fault. It's not the trust's fault. And it'll continue on as normal without you in it. So. That's what I mean by degree of separation. You're not the items aren't necessarily punished for your misdeeds or your perceived misdeeds. Right. It just continues on as normal. So, and that's important. A lot of guys have really extensive collections. Even if you don't, you still benefit. But if you do, obviously, you have to take steps to protect your assets. So.
Right. Yeah. Now, how does this? You talked about beneficiaries. So one of the questions I wanted to ask: what happens when I pass away, let's say I've added my whole family to the trust, and I pass away, what happens to the trust, and what happens to the firearms and the items that are listed in that trust?
Yeah, that's a good question. How it works, beneficiaries can be minors. They're the only spot or on the trust that could be minors. You have 4 spots. You have the settlor, the co-trustee, the successor trustee, and beneficiaries. The settlor is you. You're the person that's setting up the trust, and right. Yep. Then you have co-trustees, which are equals. They can handle, use, transport, store, shoot, add items to the trust. Then you have successor trustee, which is a backup. They're not a responsible party. So after 41F, they won't need to submit fingerprints and photographs. They act as more of an executor should something happen to you, right? And then you have beneficiaries. They're the only spot that could be minors. So you have an infant child, you can put them on as a beneficiary. Now, what would happen? Let's say you pass away before they're 18. You can make them co-trustees or whatever. What would happen is that item would be kept by a co-trustee or a successor trustee, allowably kept, or sold for their education, but it'd be kept by them for distribution to them when they become of age. Should they wish it, or they could sell it and take the proceeds from it, or what have you. But it's meant to benefit those people, and that's really clearly outlined. And in any good gun trust, it's that's a really big part of it. At least how we usually see it is guys will put normal firearms in their trusts as well. Oh, okay. It makes sense because a trust at its core is a living will, I guess you'd say, but it's a very specialized will. Okay. Right? And so when it comes to fire, our trusts are designed to encompass all firearms. I mean, a prohibited person is a prohibited person, whether you're talking about an NFA firearm or a normal firearm. If you can own a normal firearm, you can own an NFA firearm. The two are absolutely joined at the hip. So the language isn't different between them as far as anything.
For the 199 trust, you don't need a lawyer to execute this.
You don't need a lawyer. You can get it notarized anywhere. A good place to get it notarized is any bank has a notary. If you remember the bank that usually notarized for free, it's always a good place to go. The way our trusts work is if you have multiple co-trustees, we separate out the notary pages, so different notaries, different days to make it a little more convenient for guys. But yeah, you absolutely do not need to bring a lawyer into the mix. You can, but it's most places you don't need to submit it to the county or anything like that for probate reasons. Just keep a copy of the originals in a safe place, just like you would a will.
So once you've got it notarized, do you have to submit it anywhere? Do you just, like you said?
No, yeah, you'll attach it. Yeah, 99% of the time you don't. If you call the county or parish records office. Parish they would, but a county or borough, or if you're in Alaska, or so if you call your records office and you say, hey, look, do you guys keep wills and trusts on hand for probate reasons? And they have no idea what you're talking about. The answer is no.
All right. Well, just as a matter of full disclosure for everybody, as you've probably seen on the website, on my newsletter, the Armed Lutheran is a 199 Trust affiliate. So if you want to establish a gun trust, I'll have a link to 199 Trust in the show notes. It's called 199 Trust, but right now you can get a gun trust start to finish for just $79. Just click on the banner in the show notes. What's the name of the suppressor company coming?
It's going to be Rebel Silencers.
Rebelsilencers.com?
All right. It's good to go.
We'll be looking out for that as well. Eric Woodward, with the owner of 199 Trust, thank you so much for joining us today and clarifying all this for us.
All right, you bet, sir. I appreciate it, guys, and I'll shoot safe, okay?
All right, thank you.
All right.
And that's going to wrap it up for another episode of Armed Lutheran Radio. Thank you to our contributors today, Aaron Israel, Bill Silvia, and Eric Woodward for joining us. Thank you for joining us as well. Thank you for subscribing, downloading, and listening every week. We really do appreciate it. Keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next week.
For For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.com. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @ArmedLutheran and like us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/TheArmedLutheran. You can contact us by email at armedlutheranradio@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 855-54-ARMED. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio.